Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week, we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back for episode 6 of season 2 of For the Record. And today we have a little bit of a different podcast than we've had the last few episodes. We have a brand new entrepreneur on our show, well, about a year and a half in, not new to aesthetics, but new to owning her own business. And I thought about today being a really great lesson on the things that she's remembered, obstacles she's had, things that have come up that she didn't expect, from the perspective of someone who's not yet been years of distance from the whole new entrepreneur thing. And so we have with us today Ashley Carmen from Aiyana Atelier in Northern Virginia. And she is joining us right now from her beautiful, beautiful practice. You'll see it in just a second if you're watching us on YouTube. But I wanted to share a fun fact because I was listening to or reading a lot about Ashley and how she got into aesthetics. And she mentioned that her girlfriend drug her in to get Botox. And I thought to myself, well, my friend got breast implants, actually, and she was like, 21, no wrinkles at all, and said, hey, I had this Botox stuff. Do you want to go do it? Like, you could probably use it. I'm thinking, my God, what am I, an old bitch? So I got my Botox for free the first time because a friend drugged me in also. So I feel your pain about someone sitting you down and saying, honey, it's time to get the tox. So welcome to our show. We're glad to have you, and I'm looking forward to a very fun hour together with you. So come on in.
All right. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Tiffany. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Yeah, that morning that I got dragged in, I was like, he's like, hey, let's go have brunch. I'm like, okay, sure. And he's like, well, I have to make this quick stop. Just come on in with me. I'm like, all right. And where are we going? And so we walk in and he's like, here, sit down. You're getting Botox. I was like, wait, what? I'm not ready. And sure enough, I guess I was ready. So that was how it started. I did eventually get brunch also, but yeah.
It's the gateway drug, guys. We're all here because someone told us to get toxin. Then we ended up with filler and Sculptura and Quo and all the things. It's like it never, ever ends. But hey, don't we all look a lot prettier now? Like, I, for one, feel like I look much prettier now that my friend made me go get Botox for the first time. So
Absolutely.
I'm here for that.
Me too. I always love those 10-year challenges when you like put the side by sides together, and I'll show my patients my 10-year before and after, and they're like, there's no way that's you. Like, it doesn't, like, it still looks like me, but they're like, you look like you're 40 in that picture. I was like, I know. Well, the tanning beds were a bad idea, but
Well, last night, before I carry on, I was giving my little boy a bath who's 8. So I shouldn't say giving him a bath. I was in the bathroom with him. He was taking a bath, and he said, Mom, your whole face, it's all fake. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, you get all those injections all the time. I said, well, yeah, buddy, I do. And he's like, well, you do look a lot prettier now, so it's probably a good idea. I was like, oh, well, thanks. So my 8-year-old totally called me out last night for having cheeks and lips and the whole thing. So, but at least he did say I'm not as ugly as I used to be. So that's a win for me.
gotta love their honesty.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your coming into aesthetics. So you spent 10 years doing ICU, 2 years doing some travel nursing, different things. You've had a very long career in nursing and then about 5 or so years in aesthetics. So kind of take us back to where this all started and how you ended up here, and then kind of how you ended up deciding, I'm going to build a practice and just go out on my own.
Yeah, that journey was, wow, serendipitous is all I can really say, because I never set out in life to be a nurse in general. I always say that nursing found me and aesthetics certainly found me. I never had really any intentions of doing this. I always swear I was like a night shift medical ICU nurse for 10 years. And I always swear I would have like just died in the ICU, and I never, ever was going to leave. But when I started my clinical rotations for family nurse practice, I worked at a city hospital for like 7 or 8 years. And they started recruiting the city nurses to go open a suburban campus, a little closer to home, outside the city, outside of the chaos, for really focusing on like an older population. So I was like, yeah, sure. I'm kind of tired of driving down here anyway, but the mornings were getting a little dangerous. So I did that and helped open an ICU. 16 bed ICU there, with a bunch of my friends, and we had a whole lot of fun doing it. Learned a lot of lessons, but had a whole lot of fun doing it. But while I was doing that, I was also in my NP program doing clinicals, and I kind of started getting a little bit burnt out on the ICU. Healthcare was changing a lot. It was kind of like right around like Obamacare and all those things, and just healthcare in general was changing patients were changing, expectations were changing. And you kind of started feeling like you were doing nursing just to check boxes and like, oh, is all your charting done? It's like, I don't know. I didn't chart all night, but the patient's alive. Like, what do you like, what do you want from me? So it kind of, I just was getting a little bit jaded, definitely from exhaustion, but was just getting a little jaded. And so I used to kind of, everybody was like, what are you going to do when you finish your NP? It's like, I don't know. Can't I just like run around and look pretty and inject Botox all day? And it turns out I was actually apparently manifesting that because I somehow ended up talking to like the head of plastics at our hospital. And that's who did my first Botox, and started kind of chatting with him more. One thing led to another. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to open up like my own little like Botox thing, like when I'm done. Work in the ICU still, open my Botox thing on the side and just see where it goes. And, because back then everything, it was a side hustle, right? Like it could totally be a side hustle back then. Now, not so much, but back then it could be. And then my husband ended up getting a job interview here in Alexandria, Virginia. And 2 weeks later, I was done with school. We were packing the house up and moving to Virginia. And I just kind of like, okay, well, I guess that was like kind of a pipe dream, whatever. I never thought I was going to do aesthetics again. Thought I was totally done. Went to go take my NP boards, and a job that I had actually applied for, to open a surgery center that was the job, like open a surgery center. I had no idea who it was for, didn't know anything about what I was supposed to be doing other than opening a surgery center. So turns out when I actually got the phone call from them 9 months later, it was a plastics office. And so aesthetics found me right back again, and they loved the experience with everything, the whole resume and all that. So I did that for a couple of years, got the surgery center started, and here I am opening my own. So worked at a lot of different like med spa settings in between. Got a little more experience, and opening my own was like a fleeting thought because with COVID, I think everybody kind of just got really focused on training, and we had like a great pause in the industry to take a step back and be like, okay, do we all know what we're doing, or are we just out here like wild cowboys, right? So we finally had this time to get all these, everyone's like brain power together and kind of really think about everything. And I kind of had forgotten how much I loved teaching. So when I originally was opening my own practice, so to speak, it really was just to open a training center. And the place that I was at, I was actually really, really happy with. But then when I ended up finding the space, it all happened so fast. And it just was kind of a little kismet, honestly. And I swear on everything, I like went to go touch the front door and everything changed. Like I literally opened the front door and saw everything. And so 2 weeks later, I quit the place that I was at. And 2 weeks after that, I opened my own med spa.
Well, isn't that, what's interesting about your story at the end is that the real estate is what sealed the deal for you. You know, you said you used the word kismet. I just watched I'm not becoming Anna, inventing Anna on Netflix, and she's like, "Oh, kismet," one of the words that they use a lot. But it's such a funny word because it's truly like that, like serendipitous moment of, my gosh, all of your universes sort of collide into this amazing moment of, I have to do this thing right now. It's like the perfect moment for me.
I went to go open the front door, and it was one of those like you go to open it and almost like retreat back because you're like you feel like everything's getting ready to change. And I walked in and I spent 5 minutes looking at the space, walked out the back door, was talking to my husband, and he's like, it takes you longer to pick out toilet paper. Like, was there like no floor? Like, what was going on? And I was like, nope, it was perfect. I'm going to try to sign a lease today and I'm quitting in 2 weeks. And he was like, okay, well, we didn't talk about that, but all right. So that was it. Yeah.
Well, a supportive partner, number one, got to have that, right? Especially in this industry.
Yeah, he is absolutely amazing. Like he's been along for, 17 years on every crazy idea I've ever had. So this was just another one.
Well, I'm looking at your bio, obviously, the past few days and just learning about you, and I found it very interesting. And I will tell you that you've like jumped a shark because let me just list this out, guys. She's been listed in Modern Luxury DC Power Players, Modern Luxury DC Dynamic Women, Modern Luxury DC Health and Beauty. She had a whole like expert spotlight there. So you've been listed in a very prominent, obviously local because DC, but the whole country knows about Modern Luxury. You've been listed multiple times there. So, as a relatively new business owner in that market, you've already been heralded as like one of their expert people to watch. So, before we start down the aesthetics journey here, looking at your background, what you've just described to all of us, how did you go from all that to being like instantly famous as like this business owner, nurse injector extraordinaire?
Tiffany, that I have no idea. I really don't. I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful. And I think like I definitely have put in the work 110%. I think it's just, I don't know. It was one of those things like they reached out and they're like, "Hey, we want to feature you for Power Players." And I was like, "Me? Like, why? Why? How? How did you even get my name?" Like, and the editor, she's amazing. She's awesome. But she was like, literally, most of my friends see you. They're all so happy, and every time we're talking about like who to invite, like your name keeps coming up. So she's like, here we go. And it was so funny because she had no idea that I'd only been open a couple of months. And so when we were interviewing, and I told her I had just opened January 5th, and this was all happening, I think it was like April or May for the edition. And she was like this year? I'm like, yeah. So I really don't know. I wish I had some kind of recipe for the secret sauce, but
No, I'm again looking at your bio. Things stick out to me. I read people's bios and read about them. Like, how do they become who they are, right? Like, how do you get your internal vibe, your internal ambiance? You've got some Native American roots. You talked a lot about inner beauty and really servicing the whole patient, not just the external, but also how she looks and how she feels, or how he looks or how he feels. And so I'm curious as we think about as a brand new entrepreneur and what you mentioned about nursing, 5, 10 years ago is the same today. We all know that with COVID, people are burned out, they're tired, they're leaving in mass droves, they're coming into aesthetics. So we have a big rush of new entrepreneurs who are just showing up saying, I want to do my own thing. So I think this episode is extremely timely. But in doing that, how did you decide what your practice would be? What would be your vibe, how you would sell? I know you have like pricing up front, you have things very detailed for patients, no surprises, no gimmicks. How did you decide that those things were going to be your mantra or your philosophy?
yeah, I think, well, one, I can't lie for shit. So sorry. So I had really no choice. I have to be honest. I just don't have it in me to do it any other way. I have a terrible poker face. So I have a really hard time, doing a consult and talking to people, and they're like, well, they kind of take it one whole different direction, and they're like, well, I want this and this and this. I'm like, baby, we need to have a real talk. Like, you need a facelift. Like, this is so far out of the realm of anything. Like, I could sit here and take all of your money, but I am not going to. Like, I don't even want to do Botox for you. Like, I want you to go consult with a plastic surgeon, talk about a CO2 laser, talk about a facelift, talk about an upper bleph. And then when you're all done with that, then you can come back to me. But it's hard, like trying to figure out kind of what you want things to look like. And I think, I did explode really, really quickly. And I was not expecting that at all. And it has, it's such a blessing, but it's one of those things like, thank God I kind of had just like my authentic self put out there, because I wouldn't have had a second to change it. And I think for everybody who's trying to kind of figure out what they want their model to look like, it's a lot of soul searching. Like, if you're not comfortable with who you are already, you're really going to struggle doing this industry. I was fortunate. The medical ICU that I was in taught me a whole lot about everything, but that's a really hard career, and it makes you kind of very black and white about a lot of things, and makes you very appreciative of every day that you're living and breathing, that you're so fortunate, because it can change so quickly, and for good and bad, right? Like, I mean, for me, every day has been such a good change. But it really is, I don't know, you just have to kind of stay true to that path and figure it out. And so it just kind of literally started with like one print that I had done, like as far as like color scheme and stuff like that. It started with this one beautiful print that I had. And so I just bought everything in like one fell swoop and maxed out my credit card and went with the same decor that I kind of keep at home, because, we all know that like in aesthetics, you work a ton. And so I didn't want it to be a doctor's office. I didn't want it to be like something stuffy and sterile. And so I have like a ton of flowers and like live stuff going on. It's greens and blues, and it's very gender neutral. And I mean, I think if I could open a cigar bar and have the men come in too, that'd be even better. But we're not quite there yet. So one day. But yeah, so I think it's just staying true to who you are.
That cigar bar, that's 2023 plans right there. That's next year.
Next year. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't really kind of figuring out what I wanted it to all look like. I had worked with enough other practices and enough different environments to know that I kind of I didn't want to be like a Walmart of med spas. I didn't want to have everything. I wanted to offer like that concierge experience where people are, and that's what like the market that I'm in, that's what they want. As I started to get busier, I actually sent out a survey and asked my patients point blank, like, if I'm really getting busy, like, do you want me to hire another injector? And every single one of them, like, it was kind of a 50-50 split, but then I left a box, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I left a box for like comments on their answer. And every one of them was just like, if you train them and you trust them, I will see them if I can't get into you. And then I was kind of like, well, it's just at some point we're just going to have to say no at that point, because I don't want to change the model. I don't want it to dictate who I am and how I want to run things. So I think that's probably it. I was fortunate I grew up in private practice also. So that probably helped with like the foundation. My dad was opening a lot of different hospitals and things like that. And so and private offices. And so I kind of grew up already like knowing what worked and what didn't work. So
Well, I think that's a tough decision to make, and I have to tell you that as I think of what you just said about do you hire an injector or not, is you have to decide really at this point where you are right now of how you want to grow, right? Do you want to grow in people, or do you want to grow in higher ticket procedures, that that high margin, low volume mentality? I think you have to know now. And people always say, why do I have to know these things now? Because you have to prepare today for what you'll be in 10 years, right? That's the basis of scale. And you guys all know I'm obsessed with scale. It's what I do all day long in a aesthetic record. But you have to kind of decide it now, because you're training your patients, to what you just said about your survey, to believe that you operate in a certain way, and then to go ahead and change it all of a sudden. People freak out. That people hate change. Like, oh no, I'm only going to see Ashley. And then, that becomes a whole other issue, and you have to deal with that headache. And it just kind of perpetuates on and on and on. So I think you've had to, putting your flag in the sand now, saying I'm going to stay just me doing this. Obviously, you have some help. You have a director of operations in your practice, and certainly I'm sure you have other people helping you that we'll kind of go into later. But as far as being the only injector, like, that's a pretty significant decision to make. And in doing that, are you only focusing on injectables and skincare? Are you doing any devices, any lasers? Where's the bulk of your revenue coming from?
yeah, it's actually funny you asked that, because I had 4 laser reps that came into my door today in the 7 hours I was working before this podcast. So no, I am all injectables and skincare, and that's it. I don't have a hydrofacial machine. I have no devices at all. I have a microneedling, but I don't really consider that a device. But yeah, like, I have microneedling. I do peels. I have a private label skincare line. I carry PCA as well, Revitalash, Skin Aid, Nutrafol, and that's it. But I think that in this industry, you kind of you're wavering on that line of that, like, rolling patients out 10-minute Botox appointments at a time, and you're still really, really crazy busy, and you're like, maybe the revenue is a little bit higher, but balancing that with like your happiness and your work-life balance. And like, at the end of the day, like, do I want to see 26 patients a day? No, I don't. Like, it's exhausting. It's a lot of emotional strain. You're carrying all of their stuff. You have the same conversation 26 times all day. And especially in the last 2 years, the hot topics are the hot topics, and you got 5 of them. And so you're talking about it all day long, whether you want to or not. And, and then doing the facials that I do, I always kind of joke with my patients, like, if you want like that spa facial experience, you need to go to the Ritz. Like, I'm not it. You are here getting a facial with me that is going to produce change in the skin, that's going to give you a result. And I'm very result driven. So like, if that doesn't work for you, then save your money and go to the Ritz. But like, if you want like the shoulder rub and all of that, go there. If you want like your skin to change, then come see me. And I think patients figure that out very quickly. Like, my skincare is based on time. Like, you have 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or 60 minutes. And what we do in that time is what we can fit in. And then there's no surprises at checkout. They booked 30 minutes, they're here for 30 minutes, and they're out the door. and they spend what they spend. So
I've never gone into a medical spa and thought, gosh, I want to have a spa experience. Like, do people actually think that? I assume that they do, but I can't imagine going in to see my nurse injector or my physician, even like a plastic surgery office, and thinking, gosh, I hope that they're going to use banana leaves and fan me and put me in a robe and like, douse me in love and care. Like, I'm going to a medical facility to get medical things done. Like, that just never occurs to me. But I guess to your point, people think that that's going to happen when they get there, and maybe they're disappointed when it doesn't. But that seems like an outlandish thing to me. But to that same idea, I read also about you that your consultations are pretty lengthy, that you do a pretty robust job of going through everything. You now talked a little bit about retail and about leveraging skincare. And to that point, I think about what you just mentioned on revenue being higher. I hear from new people, new owners all the time, oh gosh, the revenue is not high. I'm like, but what about your profit number? If you're buying all these things all the time and your shelves are bulging at the seams with product, you've got 18 lasers and all these things, what are you actually bringing home in your paycheck? Like, obviously if you guys own a business, you don't really get a paycheck, you get whatever's left over. But the profit versus the revenue conversation for a new entrepreneur is always very hard. So you learn that obviously quickly, obviously having a parent who grew up, building businesses and things. But give me an idea on like how your consultations work and sort of your mindset on managing your profitability and keeping your overhead low and, that whole like entrepreneurial thought process.
yeah, I think, opening a practice, you definitely have to look at all of those things. Those 4 laser reps that came in today, they come in and I'm nice about it, but I'm like, I'm not a laser practice. Like I won't be, I'm not going to be. And their argument is always like, oh, it's only eight patients a month or 10 patients a month and you'll make your money back. And, then all the normal things that you hear when they're coming in trying to sell you on things. And I appreciate where they're coming from. I appreciate their job and they're very much needed. But at the same time, like, currently it's, the middle of February right now, and I'm fully booked until the end of May with 100 people on the wait list. So like for me to bring in a laser that cost what, 50, 60, 75, $150,000, like, and the magic 8 patients that you need a month, how does that make sense? Like it doesn't. Like, why would I spend tens of thousands of dollars to bring in a laser when I'm not hiring anyone else? And then I now have disposables for the headpieces. It's still the same 30 minutes. It's still the same 45 minutes. Like, so if I'm doing a $500 IPL on a $100,000 IPL machine, like it takes me 30 minutes to do that and I do 8 in a week. Well, those same 8 slots could have been filled with a Botox or a new patient or lips or a jawline or cheeks or full face sculptor butt. Like there's so many different things that you can do to make money where there's that revenue, that price margin is so much higher for you with like consistent overhead. You look at like the rep companies with talks and fillers, stuff like that. We have so many options, and it's just trying to figure out like what works in your practice. I do carry all of them, but by carrying all of them, like it allows me to kind of be with everyone. Like everyone who comes in, if they came from somewhere and they're like, "Hey, I want Botox," I'm like, "Okay, let's do Botox." And I tell them in that consult, like we've got 4 options to choose from. So if you ever find that Botox doesn't work for you, you have other options. Like, don't immediately hate me or hate your result. Like, it might just be that you haven't been happy with your previous injector because maybe you need to change product. And so we talk a lot about like the different options, but ultimately their patients are really good about leaving it up to kind of me. I spend so much time in those consults. My consults generally are anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour sometimes, if I have it. And we talk about everything from skin. I always ask them like, what, when you look in the mirror, what is it that you want to change? And then when you look in the mirror, what is it that you like? Because that's always that good gauge. Like, are we dealing potentially with like a body dysmorphic? Because if I'm looking at someone who's very beautiful and they list off 3 things that like, normal, right? Like, oh, I don't like my bunny lines, or I'd like bigger lips, or I'd like a sharper chin, whatever. And then I turn it around and I say, okay, well, what 3 things do you love about your skin or love about your face? And they can't name a single one. And I think they're like a knock 9 out of 10. Like we have a different type of conversation because there should be a little, we all need to love ourselves a little bit. Like we're all really beautiful and we have a lot to offer. And it sets the tone for like the relationship, because I always will tell my patients too, like we're in like monogamous marriage. Like I'm not going to step out on you. Like just be honest with me and let's talk and let's make sure that we're a good fit. And if we're having a problem, let's talk about it.
When I think what you said about the monogamous marriage, I love that because I have so many girlfriends. Having been in this industry, I've been here for a hot minute too, just like as you have. I have so many girlfriends, even in the industry, sales reps and people who go to 18 different injectors. Oh, I have so and so do my lips, and she does my cheeks, and she does this, and they end up looking like a caricature because each person has their own individual goal for that patient, their own ideal of beauty, and then the patient becomes sort of this mixed mashed canvas of everyone's ideals, and it comes together in this most horrible way. And so I'm always telling friends who ask me, I'm sure you get a lot of like at any party you go to, can you look at my face? It's no different from me, I promise, although I'm not an injector, but people just think that because you're in the industry. And I always say the first thing is find a person that you like and stick with them. And if you want to get different things done by different people, you got to find who reflects your aesthetic and what you think is beautiful, what you think makes you feel good, and just stay there. Jumping around is so much harder for a patient. And I think when you are a newer practice, patients want to come in and just try you out. I hear like, "Oh, I was going to try her out. She's new in town." Like that, it doesn't work that way. You have to kind of commit to somebody. Obviously, try you out, make sure that they like you, that you have the right idea. Consultations and such. But once you get a great result, stay there. Like if it ain't broke, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I think patients, even now, they have a very, they're not monogamous. They're what is it, polyamorous? When you have all the people, they want to go everywhere. So how do you keep them with you? Like how do you make them retain obviously great results, but how do you make them want to stay and fall in love with just you?
I think that's really hard, right? I mean, in DC, there's most of my patients are passing 3, 4, 10, 20, 40 injector practices, plastics practices, derm offices before they even get to me. So, again, I wish I had a recipe for that secret sauce, but I think the upfront pricing is really helpful. I have consistent pricing. I have like a new patient package. If they're just coming to try me out and that's what they want, and they're just like testing the waters, they can get a little bit of a cheek pop and then a little lip pop or a chin pop. So it's like a little bit of like two areas where it's like just that taste. They get like a little bit of their tox. Like I do up to 45 units on it, and it's a set price. And so when they book that appointment, they know coming in, it's a set price. Every patient that's new to me always gets a 2-week follow up, no matter what. And I tell them, like, if you wake up in 2 weeks and you're so happy with everything and you love it, send me pictures. I'll cancel your appointment. That's the only appointment that's not subject to like a cancellation fee or a no-show fee. But like if you don't show up for that follow-up, whether it's virtual or in person, I'm reaching out. I reach out, my director of operations reaches out and it's like, hey, we had a 2-week follow-up today. I know it was virtual, but just wanted to make sure you weren't having trouble sending photos. Is everything okay? Because you get that one patient that has like the heavy brow, or that one patient that has lips that settle a little bit off, and it really can, it spreads like wildfire, right? And so trying to make sure that they're getting back in for those follow-ups is really important for me. And then at that follow-up, we automatically book them for their next appointment. So they're already like kind of committed. And most of the time they forget about it. And then they get that reminder and they're like, oh yeah, crap, I do need my Botox. And then they come back in and I have it set at like a seasonal maintenance package. So they come in, they get all the tox that they need for their full face, whether they're 30 units or 85 units or whatever. They can add PRF to their under eyes for like a discounted price. They can, not discounted, but like comboed, because they're already there for their seasonal maintenance for like their tox and their peels. So that's a set price straight up. And then they can add in their under eye treatment for like half price essentially. We can add neck bands for a little bit of a discount. And so it all puts it in together. So if you on your treatment plan require every couple months, you want to have your full face done, you want your peel, you want your under eyes, you want your neck done, it is always going to be the same price. And I don't think I don't know why it's such a novel idea, but I don't think anyone else can say that. I know before when I was getting injections done, like every time I went somewhere, it was different. Like when I first moved to DC, I walked in to get my like 30 units of Botox and walked out, and it was like $900. I'm like, what? Wait a second. Like, do you have dishes in the back? Like, I can't pay that. So I don't know I don't know what to do here. And I think that puts patients in a really bad spot. And that it just perpetuates like expectation of a bad result, which is not fair to anyone. If they're not happy when they're leaving with the price, or they're not getting into the register knowing what that price is going to be, you're already setting up to fail. So every appointment we have like a mini consult again. We talk about what their price is going to be walking out the door. And then they're at ease. They're not like tensed up during the procedure. They know going out the door, they can put it on this credit card. They can use the cash that they're hoarding from grocery money. They're like, all the things. And they feel okay with it. And then I also offer a membership program. So
Okay, well, you just unpacked so many things. I got to take like 27 steps back because all the things you said are gold. And like I said, when we started this thing, like you are my people. You are my people. My team would all tell you that I will market my casket. Like I will make my casket have a kitschy name with like branding on it. I'm just that way because I think that people cling to things that are organized and understood. Patients, children, adults, marriages, I don't care who you are, when things are nicely packaged and well understood and defined, people will gravitate towards them because we hate ambiguity and making decisions as humans. Think about going to a restaurant. Who knows what you're going to eat tonight? Nobody knows until you roll up to the place and eat. So this idea that you package it together to me is brilliant. And to your to what you just said, why is it novel? I have no idea. If I'm in a med spa, I'd be just in the same boat you are. Like just do it. So I think that that is, if you're a person listening to this, old entrepreneur, right? Not new, but you're listening to this as a person who owns a business. People love to understand what they're going to get and to understand the whole year because they don't know what they want or what they need. And you're making it easy, right? You're saying this is what you need. It's going to cost you this. Good luck. Have fun. We'll see you in 3 months. I just feel like that's a genius way to do it. And by the way, for you, it's predictable revenue, right? You're going to get them coming in at the same cadence every single time. They're going to pay X amount of money. So first of all, that's genius, and I love it. So guys, that's a lesson to take here for sure.
there's a yearly maintenance too that includes like filler. Yeah. If they're like, oh, I want my lips, my cheeks, my under eyes, my tox, my peel, it's all packaged together. It's flat price.
Well, and then the second thing you said to that same point about the yearly and just these packages is the new person has the option to get enough toxin to get a result, a little pop here, a little pop there, because people don't want to get everything up front, right? They're not ready to commit the money to you in many cases, and so I think giving them a little taste of what's going to happen, enough to obviously have a result and feel like they have value, but it's a toe in the water. But then they want to end up marrying you, to your point earlier, and they want to be monogamous with you, but they at least get to try it out. And I think what happens in many practices is they just get toxin and they think, oh, I'm just going to go to her for my Botox. And they forget that these people do everything else. They do sculpture and filler and skincare and all these other things. So you're letting them sort of try a smorgasbord, if you want to call it that, in the beginning to find out what all you do, which I think, again, genius idea. Give them a taste of something. But the part of your website that I found so compelling, and guys, people are gonna cringe when they hear me say this. Actually, this is gonna be the chaotic part of this podcast. Is you have a package where you can both dissolve their lips and redo them. It makes me want to jump off of a bridge. When people say, I don't dissolve here, go back to your other injector. We don't dissolve here. If you didn't get it from me, I'm not touching it. BS, people. That's not the way it works in this industry. There are 35,000 injectors in aesthetics, if not more than that now. No one is only going to ever come to you their whole life. That is not real. So you're like, screw it. We're going to monetize it. We're going to charge to dissolve it, and we're going to re-inject it. Problem solved, move on. And don't do this like mean girl thing of like, you didn't come here, can't touch those lips. I just find that to be so unnerving as a human that I'm like, well, I'm coming to you for you to help me. I'll pay you. I will pay you to help me, but can you just help me? Nope, can't do it here. So kudos to you for that because I feel like that is the thing that we have to dissolve. We have to start over. That's just part of fixing people's work, fixing your own work. So how did you decide to be like me and decide to be controversial and say that that's what you should be doing as a practice owner?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is not a profitable package, I'll fully admit, because I do it as a flat price. And we know that dissolver is very expensive. We know filler is very expensive. And then it's also, two separate appointments, sometimes three or four. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. Like it just is the right thing to do. Like I've had to dissolve my own work a handful of times. I've had to dissolve my own lips a couple of times. Just it migrates. It happens. I'll probably piss off the whole industry, but like you can be the perfect injector on the perfect set of lips and use the perfect product. And when it's in there for 5 years, guess what? It's not there anymore. Like it's going to move. You're putting it in a round muscle that never shuts up, never quits moving. And so it's going to migrate at some point and you're going to have to fix it. And rheology has changed so much since I started. Um, Even in the past 2 years. Oh my gosh, we've had so many advances in the past 2 years, even. It's crazy. And so sometimes they just like not all the kids want to play in the same sandbox at the same time. Like it just is not going to happen. So take it all out and just start over and do it for your patients. Do it for yourself. Like, cause I don't want to go over that work. It's going to make my work look terrible. And I'll be really honest, since I started doing it, I have had so many patients that we've just dissolved and they love their natural lips because they had that collagen boost for all those years. And so now it's like, Kylie dissolved her lips, right? Well, she still has lips. And I think that that's once patients see that, like they're fine with it. And they're like, no, I'm actually really good. And so for that, if we're not refilling and they decide ultimately that they don't want to refill, they just get product credit for in-house. And so I still give them something where they're like, not like, oh, I spent all this money dissolving.
And if nobody ever dissolves it, it never gets dissolved. I mean, that's what someone, someplace has to do it. But I'm a person who, my other half is an injector. Obviously, many of you, I'm sure, know who that is. But I had just had my under eyes dissolved. And he was like, "Sister, you got to get that fixed." But we were talking about this. I don't have a lot of migration, but you age, right? Ligaments stay in the same place, and your face moves. So even if the filler stays in the exact same spot, your entire face has not. If it's been 10 years, your face has moved. And we know filler lasts forever. I mean, we see x-rays, histology reports, people lasting, 10, 15, 20 years. Like, the stuff doesn't go away unless you really want it to stay. And then all of a sudden, if it's my lips, it goes away in like 2 weeks. But, it doesn't go away. And so I feel like as an industry, we've got to kind of get a grip on the fact that dissolving, while it may not be so sexy and profitable, all these things, like someone has to do it. We can't keep going because no one goes back to that injector that did it and said, "Hey, can you dissolve my lips? I don't like how you did them." Like, no one does that. None of us are confrontational enough in many cases to do that. We want to come to you and say, "Ashley, we like the way that you do lips. Can you help us get the lips that you give us?" And then you have to say, "Yes, I'll dissolve them." But it's going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I'm all for, like, charge them, they'll pay it. If it were me, I'm like, take my money, let's get this thing fixed. And so I don't know, I just feel like that was a thing that for me with you stood out in a big way, that you actually were marketing it. It's on your site. Like, get it refreshed, get it redone. So congratulations on being a disruptor.
Thank you. I think a lot of times, like, it's astonishing how many patients didn't know that they could dissolve. Like, I think it's been a little more popular in the last year or so. And I do always encourage them to go back to their previous injector because at the end of the day, I am going to charge you. They may not. They might, but they may not. Like, I don't ever charge to dissolve my own work. If I'm the only person who's ever touched your face, I don't charge that. And that's just normal operational expenses that you have to eat as a business. But when you're coming from like 3 or 4 different injectors, like we have a lot of military in DC, and so every 2 or 3 years, these girls, the women, the men that I see too, like they're in and out, and they've seen 20 injectors in their military career, and none of their work's like bad. It's just been, it's like you said earlier, it's everybody's looking at their treatment plan, so it just gets a little funny looking, and you're like, okay, let's just like take a step back and start over.
And as a person in the chair, you're grateful for that. I get my stuff dissolved all the time, for not because it's moved, it's because, oh, my cheek's a little different here. We want to try a different angle this time. I mean, it's not comfortable. You guys all know that it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but goodness, it's worth it. It hurts like a mother when you're getting it done, but it is what it is. You just got to do it. But moving on from that, before I get stoned in the public square, you have also a VIP experience. You mentioned your membership program. Give us an idea of how that works and sort of what your mindset was in thinking about what you're going to offer for freebies or for discounts, and really the whole setup of your membership program.
Yeah, so the VIP is, part of being a business owner is kind of early on. I knew I wanted to do some kind of VIP thing, but I also knew that my ultimate business plan was to not be, a mega center. It was always just going to be me. So, kind of very much what you mentioned earlier, you have to have that long-term plan, even if it seems crazy to be thinking about it now. So I really I don't do discounts. I don't do specials. I don't do promos. I don't do any of that. Like, what you see is what you get. If you want it to be a little bit cheaper, you can do the VIP experience. So it offers a like 5% off injectables, 10% off skincare and retail services. They get 15% off any appointment that they have during their birthday week. And the birthday one's no limit. Like the 5 and the 10% have like a couple of exclusions, but not many. And then the kicker for it was that every 3 months they get a skin service of their choice for free. So the big ones that have happened over the past 14 months have been Aquagold and microneedling with PRF. Patients love it. And again, like my reps are gold to me. Like I absolutely adore my reps so much. And they are the reason that I can keep doing it for sure. Um, they're helping to support it a lot, but my VIPs also get $125 chemical peels instead of 300. They can add on PRF to any appointment that they want for 300 instead of 750. Like, it just creates like more like that loyalty. And I'll tell them straight up, I'm like, if you're getting married, do the VIP program. Just do, like, it's 6 months. It's a monthly charge that they're paying, and it'll get you perfect for your wedding. It'll get you exactly where you want to be for your wedding, and then you can cancel it. It's a 6 month commitment, and it auto renews. And then when they want to cancel, we just cancel it. They run all their money and they're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Like, okay. So then when like new products come out, I'll give all my VIPs like the trial for free. Just different things. Like, they have unlimited use to the LED light. We have like a Saluma LED light. Highly recommend investing in that for sure as a new business. It's not that much, and it's a great product. They come in, they all take their naps, they like listen to their work meetings, do their podcast, and sit under the LED light and take a nap for a while. So, and I don't charge for it.
So
That's
it
it.
has its perks.
So it's
Definitely has
been,
its perks. Lots of perks.
yeah, there are free model calls, like, because with trainings and shadows, like, obviously I always need people. So they're always the first call and the first email. Like, I did a huge 12 days of Christmas thing this past year. And they got notification a little earlier about it than everybody else. They had a chance to get it before it may have sold out. So things like
Well, I
that.
think that's where people fall off the rails on membership programs is, recurring revenue, first of all. Guys, if you're not using that, as a practice owner, recurring your revenue based on your bill cycle is genius because money comes in as it's coming out. So I'm always an advocate for these long-term plans. You mentioned these like subscription plans that are long-term, but also recurring revenue. But as I think about that, the same idea is you have to make them feel like a VIP, right? There has to be a benefit to being a member beyond just getting the financial discounts. Like, I can go get a discount anywhere, right? I'll go do an event. I'll be like the Botox girl walking around looking at all the events and the discounts and the Groupons. There's no value to me if I can't have an additional experience because I am a member, right? It has to be this like special thing that I get that no one else has because I bought into you. I committed to you. And so I think people look at them like, oh, it's a great retention strategy. It's great for revenue, but they forget about the part that it has to be special. It has to be different. It has to be this additional extension of you that makes, the email before anybody else gets it, to get to be a model. All these things make them just feel really fancy. And as humans, we all want to feel like we belong somewhere. It's just the way we all operate that way. So I think that's a lot of it. People probably come to you and think, gosh, I'm not going to cancel. Forget the 6 month thing. I want to keep going because this feels so good to be, to be part of this bigger thing. I can imagine that those brides want to keep looking great past it. When the wedding is over is when it really gets real, guys. That's when the hard part starts. You need more Botox after the wedding, trust me, than you do before it. I can promise you on that one. The divorce is even worse. You won't even go there. But, I think they'll stay with you long term for that. So I digress, guys, as I go into that. So thinking about that, as you had all these genius ideas coming into this, relatively as a new entrepreneur, how did you figure out like what you were going to do versus what you were going to outsource? Like, do you have a CPA, a bookkeeper, an attorney? Because you're a one man show right now, which I know you cannot do all that you're doing and work in the business and work on the business. There ain't no way, sister. So give us the secrets about how you're keeping this whole thing going.
Yeah, I mean, we all definitely get the same 24 hours, right? So, from the very beginning, I have an amazing, amazing accountant who is so helpful, and he really is very, very business savvy on top of being money savvy. So, he's been an absolute godsend. I was fortunate to find an attorney actually through my husband. Um, he just had a friend of his that, well, not really a friend, friends loose. One of the guys that he like kind of works with here and there, happens to be like a huge, like pretty high up attorney, and he has access to a full team. So getting that out of there, and it gives me a little bit of peace of mind that like no matter what I ask, they've got somebody who can answer, because that's huge. Like, I mean, you end up really, I think there's a lot of med spas popping up here and there and left and right, and injectors doing stuff a lot of crazy ways. And if you're at the end of the day, like if it's not legal, like all of it goes away real quick, and it can be gone, just as fast as it came on. And it's like, that idea that literally every single day, like I'm going to bed, hopefully, I got to do it right this first time or it's not going to sustain. And it has to be something that's sustainable. So outsourcing definitely, so that you can be sustainable, because you can't do it all. Bringing on my operations manager, Brandon, in May was absolutely the best decision I think I have made this year. He was the one who actually was dragging me to that first Botox appointment. So we have been best friends for a lot of years. We're actually coming up on our 10-year anniversary this year. So we kind of keep joking that like we don't know what to get each other. But it's having somebody that treats your business like you treat your business is really hard to find. And also somebody whose ultimate goal is to make sure that you are okay. Like at the end of the day, like you've got to have somebody in your corner who sees all of the business part of it and knows that nitty gritty, knows what that day to day looks like. And at the end of the day, is just like, okay, like, what do you need today? Because it's hard, that outside the looking glass, like, it's really, really hard. You lose perspective really quickly when you're the owner and the injector and you're trying to deal with patient relations and, taking in, the more difficult patients that we have sometimes that they come and go, but they can be really, really challenging. And so having somebody who like really is protectful of your business like it's theirs and protectful of you like you're theirs. It's so he's like an absolute godsend. I really can't say enough like amazing things about him, but he is also on the same wavelength I am 97% of the time. So it is his speed runs high like mine. So we're pretty efficient at everything. So we're able to, for it to just be the two of us, and it works. And I think sometimes we talk about getting another front desk because he actually is still virtual halftime because he doesn't live here. He lives in Pittsburgh, so he drives down every other week to hang out for a few days and work in the studio, and then everything else he does is from home. So he's been really like a huge asset. So, and then outsourcing, I think ultimately your friends and family. Like I honestly, like I've got the most supportive husband, the most supportive family on the planet. Like they were here on Christmas, like painting walls the year before I opened and hanging stuff. And it's like, it's Christmas Day. Like that's not what anyone wants to be doing, but they were so excited for me that they did it and they didn't even ask questions. They were like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, okay. Like, so I really, having them and finding your crew in this industry is gold. I mean, having those girls you can call, the guys that you can call the middle of the day and they're going to answer, that is, and I mean, it's not technically outsourcing, but that mental energy is, I mean, I guess technically they're outsourcing as a therapist, but they are, yeah, it's just like having somebody to like literally sit and like shoot the shit with at the end of the day and know that like you're not actually crazy. I mean, it's, you can't imagine like the relief that you get when you find your people. And you know that again, they're looking out for your best interest and they're saying your name in rooms that create opportunities and you're doing the same and that there's no competition about it.
Well, I agree that we should all get a Brandon. Brandon is like hustling for you. He is on it. Like you got to get to go on a podcast, but people need that. You need an advocate because you can't. It's what you just said about being in the rooms. You can't be in that room, right? You can't be in every single room. You can't be the person who's talking about you. We actually had Rachel Duke on last week, and she was talking about she's precious. Like I networked so hard because people could be my advocate. People would say my name, and to your point, in a room because they knew I was good at my job. I was a great injector, and I could depend on them to kind of speak my gospel, if you will, because I couldn't be there. And I think what she said about networking and like finding a crew and finding people who you trust and who will have your back and be part of your advocate group is so critical, especially in an industry where everyone's trying to cut everyone else's knees off. You've got to find a crew because people here turn you into to the legal discussion, turn you into the medical board, the nursing board, this board, the health department, that board. There's so much infighting and backbiting where if we all just ran really good businesses, we could avoid all that. There's enough wrinkles, there's enough people, enough money to go around that we're going to all be fine. It just creates drama, right? It's not the good kind. But I want to think about the training part that you mentioned because I know that your training aspect of your business is a big part for you. You mentioned at the very beginning that you kind of came into this becoming a trainer and thinking about how to have a training space. And as an attorney, looking at the attorney part, that discussion is like, I know if you're doing trainings in your facility, you better have your legal stuff buttoned up. If people are going to be injecting on your soil, on your turf. And so give us an idea of how the training works. How does it fit into your business? What does it look like for you as an entrepreneur to split your time between training and treating patients? Walk us through that whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. My attorneys constantly are are a little eye rolling, and they're billing, so that's all. But they definitely take really good care of me. It is training is everything from shadows to just 4-hour beginner Botox to full day sculptor trainings to full day filler trainings. I try to kind of streamline like one thing that we want to talk about. Because I feel like, you get these trainings and then it's all over the place. Like you're like, oh, okay, let's have 8 new people come in and use the space, and we're going to do an 8-hour training. And it's like everybody comes in with this like whole different idea of what they want out of the day. I think it's hard to teach experience people. It's very challenging because like you don't know what they know and what they don't know. So it's like this kind of weird dichotomy of, okay, do I sound stupid? Like, do you need to train me? Like, I don't really know. So it's really, it's hard to train someone with a lot of experience, but with new sponges, like you kind of have this all access pass to like their brain and how it's working, and it makes you a better provider because they make these connections that you've never even thought about, and then you're sitting there thinking like, oh, that's like really smart. Like, why didn't I ever think about that? Because we get so used to doing our day to day, and it becomes such autopilot. So we just came off. We have one more in March, or one more this month, and then one more in March, where it's a 4-hour tox training for brand new injectors that are maybe thinking about it, kind of thinking about it, and that's kind of set up a little bit like a business consulting, a little bit like tox training, and a little bit of hands-on, and then creating those networks for those providers. And then in the spring, we're going to be moving, kind of shifting and taking a step back from injectables and doing more skincare training. So doing like kind of a buildable series on how to get skincare in your practice, and like how as an injector, like can you be a good skin provider, because it all goes together. Like I don't want to do sculpture on you if you're still washing your face with St. Ives. Like it's not going to happen, right? Like we've got to talk about the whole picture, because if not, they're really wasting those beauty dollars when they really, everybody's got their beauty bank. Everybody has a budget. Every girl's got a budget, whatever it is. Like they might be really different across the board, but you've got it and you got to stick to it. And so as providers, like you need to figure out how to make that work. If they have, I get brides that come in and they're like, hey, I have $1,000 to prep for my wedding for my skin. What can you do? Like your answer does not need to be nothing. It like they definitely can have an amazing transformation with $1,000. It just takes a little bit of thought, a little bit of time, a little bit of patience and commitment from them. So, kind of pushing that VIP for them, because that's where that makes the most sense for them, because it's discounting their peels, it's giving them LED, things like that. But kind of teaching other providers how to do that. So some of it comes with like business consulting and all of the trainings, and then other parts is strictly just technique. So that's where a lot of the training's coming in at. We actually organize, I think this will be our 5th one. We're actually going out to see Shelby Miller in April. And I love her and everything that she does. So I actually am kind of taking like a lot of girls from the East Coast, and we're all going out together. So I'm making it like a whole fun thing where it's networking and it's community, and it's like find your people and train together and do it together. And because then when you're out and you need to refer somebody, you know who you can call. Like, like, hey, they're going to know that I injected this tear trough this way. So if I'm having a problem and I can't see that patient, or I'm out at a conference, or I'm out of town or whatever, you've got a friend to call. So kind of creating that network here and taking it somewhere else to travel, to train too. So it's kind of training everybody from like the very novice and like, hey, I'm thinking about opening a business. Hey, I think I want to do aesthetics. Okay, well, come shadow. Let's do a business consulting, like just private training for a couple of hours, and talk and have a conversation. And let me give you like the real scoop on how to open, an injectables practice or a med spa or whatever it is, and how much that's really going to cost you. Because it looks easy on paper, but when you open those doors and you've got $6 in your checking account and all your credit cards are maxed, it's a whole different ballgame. So you got to have that. It's like I don't think people realize that, Instagram makes it look really easy, and they don't. Instagram's really not good at showing the hustle and the grit. And if you don't have the hustle and the grit, like this is probably not the industry you should be in. You got to have that real tough skin. So the trainings are helpful for kind of creating that community and doing everything from business to actual like hands-on, to shadowing, to kind of like what type of practice do you want to be in?
We're big Shelby fans as well. Room Academy, she just launched her like official academy thing. We're seeing academies kind of popping up everywhere and training programs everywhere. And so, I say this if my podcast every week. I think I say this: that there's not enough good training in the industry. There's just not. There's so much of it's manufacturer driven, which we guys, we all know it's on label. They can't say a lot. They have to be very specific about what they can and can't train on. So the more good people who take up the, the charge to go out and train and teach people from, the newbies to the advanced injectors, we need more of you to stand up and do it and help. As long as you're the expert, you're great at it. Obviously being safe, comply, all the things that you have to do. But if that's what you're calling, gosh, the industry needs it right now. I think more than ever, because to what you said earlier, there are so many. Rheology has changed. We have now more regenerative products. We're doing hyperdilute radius, not just radius. Now it's hyperdilute. Now we have Renuvo. We have, Sculpture has a different dilution now, and everything is just changing and evolving for the better. Definitely for the better. Don't get me wrong, but it does present new problems or new challenges of like who's going to train these people, who's going to learn it fast enough. And you had to find those innovators who've been doing it that way for a long time without people really knowing to come in and say, oh, yeah, I've been doing that thing forever. Here's how you do it. But you kind of got to come out of the woodwork and raise your hand and say, I can train on this thing. And it's not always easy to find because a lot of the clinicians who are really, really good are really, really busy, right? They're busy with their own patients, they're running their own practices. And so getting out and making time to go train is a challenge. But you guys will have a blast, I'm sure, at Shelby's practice. Those girls have more TikToks and more dances. I tell you, I don't know how they do it. I would look like a beached well on their TikToks. I could never go there and visit because I'd be a hot mess. But as you think about, kind of rounding up it's again almost been an hour. It's like it goes so fast. But as we round this up, I know that you love to mentor, and you're obviously teaching and preaching about running a business. What are some things that you never expected when you started this as an entrepreneur versus being an employee of someone else's? And then what are some things that you feel like, gosh, if you could just go back and change it, like how, your skin crawls thinking about how could I have ever done that? Give us a couple of your wins and a few of your losses.
Oh man, I think the one thing that has really been underestimated in like owning your own business is this sounds so stupid, but it's such a waste of time on a day to day. How many boxes come in? Like, oh my God, every day there's like 20 boxes. Like, you deal with enough Amazon at home, but like I literally come in and I can spend like an hour of my day unpacking like shit. It's all day, every day, like putting it away, putting it in inventory. Like honestly, just the inventory management is something that I never realized like how much of it was. And it's like no matter how many times I like helped with the Costco runs growing up and helped with like the office cleaning and all of that, it's like you're doing so much of it. So that was probably the one thing that surprised me the most, which is it seems so stupid and so basic, but I feel like everybody listening is going to be like, oh my God, seriously, like there's so many boxes. So when you're the only one, it's a time suck. It's a huge time. I found I was very quickly spending an hour or 2 hours like every 2 days dealing with that. So that was probably the one big thing. Social media is always a challenge. I had a really strong social media before I opened my own business, but because you are your brand, you are your business. And from the very beginning, I had Botox and bourbon and, was running that and patients could find me on that. And so the social media presence was already like strong. Um, but like then TikTok and it's and reels and the algorithm, like that challenge has been crazy. So I would say that for any new person coming on, just immediately hand your social media over to someone else because at this point it's a little bit of a control thing. Like patients know that they're getting me when they message, and it's like that brand, right? Like everything that I post, it has that same tone, it has that same feel, and it's because it is me at the end of the day. Like it's not, no one else is running any of that. The company page Brandon does now run, so it's super helpful. As far as the DMs and things like that go, but it's still that same tone, and we have that vibe that we're able to be kind of that same voice all the time. So I think patients feel okay about that, but that was definitely a big one. Taxes, nobody wants to talk about it. Taxes are a lot. I don't know if it's just this area or anywhere, but they're a lot. It's things you don't really think about. Your fillers are taxed and you're eating that cost. And before you're a business owner, you don't realize like they're like, oh, it's X amount of dollars for a syringe, but then it's 6% tax here in Northern Virginia. So who's that's, I mean, it's only like, 20, $30, but times 2 dozen a day or all of that, it adds up. And so you have to kind of thinking about like that price management. It sounds terrible, the losses, I'll be really honest, it's been a really good year, Tiffany. So I don't have any it's, I think you just spread yourself thin really quick. So kind of being conscious of your own time and like, I've taken a huge step back. Like I have to kind of, you get to that point where you got to start taking care of yourself a little bit more, sleeping a little bit more. Like the first, 6 months until Brandon came along, I was up until 3:30 or 4 every morning, and then getting up at like 8:30 or 9 and just running that way, which thankfully I'm able to, but it's not sustainable, like 7 nights a week. So
Yeah, that's me. That's me all the time. And I can tell you guys that it's hard. It's hard to never sleep and to be on the next day and be fabulous. I can't imagine as an injector doing it because you've got to be really on, right? People's, blindness and necrosis and like people's lives are in your hands in many ways, especially if they have an adverse event. So, yeah, sister, I'm glad you're sleeping. You need to get some sleep. That's a good one for sure.
yeah. So if anybody wants to do it, they should, definitely do it. I don't know, like, don't let anything hold you back. Like the fear is definitely there, and every single day I still think I'm crazy. So, things are going well, but they may not tomorrow, and you got to kind of ride the wave a little bit and go with the ups and downs. And some months are harder than others, and aesthetics is crazy. And it's really committing that time. And, I think we always say like we all need to invest in ourselves for so many different things. But like really invest in yourself. Like, last year alone, it was, I think my accountant just recently told me it was about $46,000 in like education and training on me, like not what I provided, just on me, and making sure that I could be the best provider that I could be. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Like you can't, it is people's lives and it's their faces, and you don't want to mess it up.
Well, I think you have an advantage too. I think about you talking, you obviously you're training, you're not new to the industry. I think if you're imagine trying to do what you're doing right now and then also learning how to be a good injector. Like people start practices all the time who've never had a training class yet. Like they start the practice and they go to training. Like that's the second week. And it makes me like hurt for them of like goodness, you are up against two mighty challenges to become a great injector and a great business owner. Like God be with you because you're going to need all the help you can get because it's you had that one already licked, right? Check the box. That's done. I know how to inject. We're good. Obviously you're investing in training and learning and growing, and that's admirable for sure. But you've already knew what you were doing going in. I can't imagine not knowing either
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, this is just like the new stuff that's we've changed in the past year of different ways of injecting and all of that. Yeah, I get a lot of it to your point there. Like I get a lot of injectors that reach out. They're starting their own, and I'm so proud of them. But then, I talk to them a month later. I'm like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, great. I'm hiring this like marketing team, or I'm hiring this. I'm hiring this. Like, I want to be busier. And I'm like, but do you like, are you sure? Like, it's not all it's cracked up to be being busier. Like, because the busier you are, you can't take those steps back. You can't perfect like you want your business to be perfect from the grounds up. It's like build your foundation first and decorate it later. And, I say it with faces, we talk about it with relationships and, personal relationships, business relationships, like build that foundation first and make that so solid that it can withstand like hurricanes and snowstorms and ice storms and all the everything. And if you can get that strong, it will come. It comes. You just got to be patient and get there. And it's like if you're a new injector, you don't have a name for yourself yet. You don't have patients that are following you to other practices. I mean, some of my patients have been with me 4 states now, and like 6 or 7 different practices at this point. Like, and they're still with me, and that's not going to change. I know that they're staying with me, just because that relationship is there, but that takes years to build. And to be honest, December 2020, when I left and decided to do this, I didn't know if they were coming. I wasn't sure. Like it's a huge gamble. So it's like just stay patient, build your bones, build your foundation. It all comes.
Especially because the risk in the beginning. I think when you start a business and you have, the whole drop brow issue, you have wonky lips. If you do anything wrong, you're under a microscope in the beginning. I think for many reasons, but that's when I think to your, to what you said, you've got to dig in as deep as you can and try to perfect every detail in that moment because. As you said, organized chaos. You only get busier. It only gets more distracting. You only have more things to do, like the toilet paper. To your to your point about Costco, when they go to sit down, if it's not there, it's your fault, right? Or if you go to sit down and it's not there, I mean, we're the same way here. We're trying to do all the things here as well. And, it's like no one's going to get the copy machine paper for us or go get our coffee for us. So we've got to make sure we go to Costco and get it or it's not going to be here. And those are the things you forget about. And guests will notice, by the way, guests will notice your bathroom before they notice your waiting room. Like these things that you don't think about become these billboards about your practice, of which once it's out there, it's hard to take it back. It's hard to walk that stuff back. So I agree with you. You gotta dig in. You'll never get back the first 6 months of owning a business. You'll never get it back. So you've got to just go all in with, the attention to everything that you can, every detail that you can, and nail it. And don't get too big too fast. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, just take your time, like do it, and it's that attention to detail is everything. Like you don't have to have the biggest practice or, the prettiest practice, but you definitely should have the cleanest one. Like, it's the little things. It's things, you're putting patients are coming in and, the bathroom, for example, it's like they're coming in, getting ready to spend hundreds of dollars with you, thousands of dollars with you, and they're just meeting you for the first time. And they go in and they wash their hands, and then there's like fingerprints on the back of the door. And they're like, okay, yeah, maybe not. Like, and you already lost them and you didn't even get to meet them yet. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, but it is that way. And we're humans. And if I'm going to trust my face to your attention to detail, you better have an attention to detail.
But, it's been an hour, like I said, and I could talk to you all day long. But for the record, you have been a fabulous representation of what it looks like to own a business, to start on the tail end of COVID and really build, your own little empire. You're building it one day at a time. And I think you've done some innovative, novel, cool things to separate yourself from the pack. And you're getting featured in magazines, and you're on our podcast. Like, people are noticing it, people are seeing it, people are calling you and wanting to mimic what you're doing and do what you do. So give us some information about how to find you, how to find your trainings, your website. Give us all the deets.
So the practice is Aiyana Atelier. You can find us on Instagram under Aiyana Atelier. It's AIYANA-ATELIER, or my personal / professional one is Botox and Bourbon, all spelled out. The website is www.aiyanaatelier.com. And then just a simple little Google search and we'll pop up. We're the only one in the US.
Knowing Botox and Bourbon is a pretty easy one, guys. So if you can't spell Aiyana Atelier, Botox and Bourbon, we got that handled around here. We can get that one done.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, Tiffany.
Well, thanks for being on. And guys, we will see you all next week for another exciting, innovative, disruptive guest. See you next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.